this creator hangout. Today is a special creator hangout. A lot of you are probably here because of New Food Economy. We're doing a collaboration with them and Jonny Hunter from Underground Meats. Jonny, a few years ago, did an incredible Kickstarter project to create an open source. I'm gonna mess it up. A HACCP plan for their company. They'll go into that. And then Kate covered their story a little while ago, so we thought it'd be really fun if all three of us got online, talked about it together. So the way this works is we're gonna chat live for the next 30 minutes. Kate's going to ask some questions. Jonny's going to share some amazing knowledge. I'm going to ask some questions. And for those of you viewing, if you would like to ask questions, you absolutely can. You can do that either by tweeting at us at Kickstarter Tips, or just if you're here on Google Hangouts, just type it into the question box and we will be paying attention. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kate, who's going to kick us off.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay, Kate froze, so I'm just gonna, Jonny, oh, she doesn't know she's frozen. Jonny, would you mind just talking a little bit about who you are and what you did?
So I am part of a group called the Underground Food Collective here in Madison, Wisconsin.
Computers are freaking you out.
And what we did is we were involved in pretty complicated regulatory businesses. So running a restaurant is a really complicated regulatory environment, but we also got into food processing and meat processing, and meat processing has the most stringent regulations of kind of any food-related business. And within that, you have to have pretty complicated food safety plans that you implement to run your plant. And we decided to take, our business was all based off of probably the most complicated processing, which is not cooked, shelf-stable meat products. And there are companies and businesses that do this, but one of the reasons that there's not more is that it's really hard to engage into the regulatory environment, and so it's a closed system for a lot of people to try to it because that information wasn't accessible. So we were struggling with how to grow our business and be part of this market, and we took on this idea that we could use Kickstarter to open source the food safety plan, or the HACCP. And I think the thing that made it attractive for us is, one, a lot of this business is run, a lot of these businesses hire consultants who charge a lot of money, and they're not necessarily giving back anything to the food safety. So foods, when you hire a consultant, you're not getting any kind of new information that is out there. You're getting a recycled plan that someone has done in another plant, and the discussion around food safety and the discussion around what businesses can be part of this economy isn't necessarily happening. And so when we went to Kickstarter, I knew that it would align two communities that would really be excited about it. And one was the kind of food community who is interested in local foods, your farmers market goers and people who are generally pretty savvy with technology. Even though they might not understand why this is important, they would say, oh, this is cool. This is cool that they're trying to share information. And the other community that is very engaged, that we knew would be really excited about this, was the open information community. And I had ties to Creative Commons, which is one of the largest organizations in that community, and so I talked to them, and they were super excited about it. So that's kind of what we did, and you guys can ask maybe more specific questions.
Yeah, maybe Kate, if you're, I hope you're working now.
I think I am.
So far, so good. Oh no.
Maybe she could write the questions on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
I was just going to tweet them for real. If all goes haywire, I will tweet my commentary.
You could tweet at me,
part of this. I think I heard most of that, and it was probably very much along the lines of why we covered you. So you might have just done my job for me as well. But I guess the only thing that I would say about that run kind of parallel to each other, that we saw as being able to support each other, but the food movement didn't really. And so we saw this as sort of a beginning effort at being able to do that, and that was something we wanted to cover.
Yeah, I will just follow up. It's, this project has been something that we've been working on continually since the Kickstarter originally, and we have done a ton of work with other plants around the country, but a lot of our information in that work hasn't necessarily been public. And so just from the success rate, the success of it, we've worked with 12 different plants who have set up their own businesses. We work with dozens of restaurants, and we've kind of become like a gathering house of knowledge around food safety plans and HACCP plans that people will just kind of randomly call us and I'm having a problem with my inspector, what do I do? And so we're able to do that. But this environment, when Kate covered it with the new food economy, one of the things that became really cool about it was it kind of made it more public again. And so it started creating a dialogue about how can we share this information even better. And so even though the project had been kind of going, there wasn't a lot of momentum on the let's share more information with more people, but getting highlighted again, even what was 2 years after the initial project, has been a really positive thing and allowed us to kind of continue to push forward. And we've put more energy back into it again. So we are going to release a couple more HACCP plans that have to do with like cooking processes that a lot of restaurants use coming up here in a few weeks. So.
That's incredible. So you're sorry, Kate and I are texting. She's gonna text me her question since we're having connection problems. But while I'm waiting for a text from her, I have a follow-on question for you. I was looking through your Kickstarter campaign earlier today in preparation for this call. And I noticed, as you said, in your comments, people were reaching out from pretty important sounding organizations, restaurants, like a spectrum of like compatriots who are just like small biz owners like you. And it was kind of, for me, mind-blowing, like that range of interest you were getting from people.
Yeah, I mean, we had the USDA reach out to us because this is generally not the way that food organizations work. They don't share a ton of information between each other, and they were like, "Whoa, wait a second! If you guys are going to share information, we want to make sure that it is correct."
Yeah.
So they've been helpful on that side of it, but
That's
we see everything from academics to restaurants to processing plants talk to us, and in a lot of ways, it's I've changed the lens in which I think about how you can share food information, and I've become really comfortable with the idea of these food safety plans, and I think the more that we can share those with small business owners, it's going to empower what is like a new food economy, these new small artists and producers to produce safer food, and hopefully we can work on a platform to help create even more kind of a wider range of places to share information.
Yeah, so I have some questions from Kate. It's just incredible that on top of all the work you're doing as a small business owner, that you're contributing so much to the field. So from Kate, the food movement is a sharing economy and always has been. One thing it doesn't have, particularly in the agriculture sector, is a formal structure for sharing, as you pointed out in the piece that you worked on. There's no intranet for sharing this info. Can you say a few things about the future of information sharing for the food movement?
Yeah. So one of the best things about the article from Kate in the New Food Economy was uh, Devin, who kind of talked about what was happening with our project, and he comes from the open source community, and he was able to point out that we've done a good job of having open information, but we haven't done a good job with the source, because when you look at open source software or something, you have like GitHub, and you can put up your software there, and then other people can download it and share the information, and then most of all the planning we've done with other people has been email, which is a closed loop, right? And we could have had these conversations on a forum or a Reddit or something like that. Then, there's just so many people out there who you meet who just have time to like research stuff that you might not necessarily see, and then you're able to build a library of knowledge that could be more engaged by more people. And so right now, we're a small kind of house of information, and I think my vision is to increase that and try to create more places for people to gather it. And I mean, it could, we're talking about food safety, and I think food safety is probably the place where like information is shared the least.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of information out there that could fall into this that happens in food production, such as, and that does get shared on the internet, and there's lots of great platforms for it, like I think YouTube.
Yeah.
But
actually that leads to a question Kate has. So she's wondering about like what would this technology look like, and who would be building it and participating? Is it food people? Is it tech people? Like, what are the affordances? What is the community that you need to make something like this happen?
I think it's more the tech people than the food people.
So you're saying you don't think that the existing, like you wouldn't go on like a Reddit or a Stack Exchange or an existing platform. You would say it needs sort of a new home.
Reddit could have a good home for it. I think we'd probably have to build something to share the food safety plans. So currently, and this is something that we're trying to think about in sharing information, is that the plans are generally a PDF or a word table, which is like the most annoying part for me, is like editing a word table. Like, it's like when I finished grad school, I was like, I'm never gonna have to do that again. But so the thing that we would want to do is work with the tech side to create a platform for us to share it in a format in which it could be shared more easily. So, and there are models out there. I think we could use like something like Git would be a good place, but Git's probably more complicated than food producers really want to use.
Yep.
So do we dumb it down and do something? I don't know. These are questions we're trying to answer now.
Yeah. So for those of you watching who aren't familiar with GitHub, it is it's a code sharing repository, and it's an easy way to take sort of a what you call like a branch of knowledge and then easily build off that, or fork it as they call it, when you make your own edits and changes.
And that would be a place where it'd be really exciting, is to see the changes in the forks, because for us that would be huge.
Yeah. So to see the changes in the so Kate asks, outside of food safety, which is about plans and paperwork, not fun, do you see another aspect of food production that could use a sharing network or this kind of infrastructure that you're describing?
I think like business development. Like, I think that's something that I work in the entrepreneur community a lot, and I work with people who are really passionate about what they want to do. But it's, you walk into a room and everyone's like, hey, I really want to make this recipe that my grandmother made, or I want to do this. And so if we could have better information around how to start a food business, I think that would be pretty helpful. Everything from financing to how to run a profitable business and understanding the financial data. I think honestly, I think that it is the number crunching stuff that is going to be the most useful in the sharing economy.
You mean beyond the food safety stuff that you're working on? Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I think has been a success for us is that Underground Meats was founded not by food artists. I mean, like someone who was like super into food artisan, and that was it. I had a lot of interests. My business partners had interests. We all had graduate degrees, So we didn't feel necessarily intimidated by jumping into the more academic side of it, which normally the academic side is separated from the artisan side, whereas like
that's interesting.
if you're doing food safety, you don't care about whether or not it tastes good. You just don't want to kill anybody. And if you're doing the artisan side, I think there's a lot that could be learned about food safety from that.
Yeah. So a question from Kate and a sort of pivot to the Kickstarter campaign side of what you did is, you know, and just for some history for the crowd, like you and I had met a while back in Madison through a friend, and we talked about different ideas that you had. I mean, you have a young, growing, thriving business. There's a lot of opportunities for you. You have anyone who goes to your website, and for those of you watching, if you haven't been, you should go. You could see all the incredible things that Underground Meats does. It's not just food safety. But I remember when you followed up with this idea to, like get the funding to do the plan and then totally open source the whole thing. It was like out of left field. So like how did you come to the decision like this was the thing that you would do? And then like why, I mean, you probably could have, I got the sense like if you wanted to go to investors in your community or find investors some other way, you could have done that, but you decided to do it on Kickstarter. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that why.
Yeah, so at the time, there had been some really successful Kickstarters around restaurants funding themselves, and my perspective was that was at the end of things, and I didn't necessarily really want to ask the Kickstarter community to help us fund a new restaurant, and even just a little bit more backup, we had lost one in a fire. It was like pretty dramatic, and like we were probably, if there was someone who could have done it, even towards the tail end of that, we probably could have had some success with it. But I got into being a small business owner as an activist. Like my interest is not to make a lot of money. My interest is because I wanted to be involved in changing the way the food system worked. And when I looked at Kickstarter, I was like, well, this will be an engagement that's just beyond, hey, help us start a business. This will be something that is beneficial for community. And I felt like that was a much stronger thing that we could do as the Underground Meats platform. And I had just become so frustrated with the consulting side of it because everyone wanted me to sign NDAs, and I was like, you mean I'm going to spend all this money and then I won't be able to help other people do it? It's shrouded in this consultant culture that doesn't really help anybody. It's only really self-beneficial.
Yeah.
So and then I would talk to other small business owners and they wouldn't help me, and I would be like, I don't want to be that person, you know?
Wait,
like,
they wouldn't help you because they had signed NDAs or because they didn't
had,
have
yeah,
time?
they had signed NDAs, or they didn't want more competition in the market.
Oh wow.
And I'm really committed to like making a good product. I don't necessarily care if like my food safety information is keeping someone out of the business. Like that shouldn't be how we compete for consumers.
Yeah, I like that. I just had an important question to ask you. I just got excited by what you were saying. So, when you made that decision, I think it was a good one. I mean, I have to say, on the face of it, this is what we were talking about here earlier when we were looking at your project. At first it's like, help fund this obscure food license. That doesn't sound like a very exciting.
Yeah.
But you did, how did you get from there to the sort of exciting, compelling story that you did get to? Anyone who looks at your project page, anyone who engaged with your project knows that it wasn't just that.
Yeah. I think I had the idea of doing open sourcing food information for a while, and so this just happened to be the place where we needed help.
Yeah.
And so that it did align well with the help we needed, and but I kind of in the back of my head, because I had connections and I'd done a decent amount of open information, access to information in grad school. I got my master's in public affairs, and one of my projects was on kind of the way that copyright affects sharing of materials and stuff and such. So I had a good understanding of that, and I just was like, okay, I'm just going to have to find a place to apply this in food where there
Yeah.
seems to be a lack of knowledge. So I think in the end, this is a little bit obscure, and people, it's really funny because people will be like, oh, we know who you are because you guys did this project, and I was like, yeah, but you think we're cool, but you have no idea about why we did it or what we did, but you just are like, you like the idea that it's about artisan food, and you like the idea that it's about sharing information. So my hope
Yeah.
is that, like we've been talking about, that we can create more plans and create a platform that would be helpful to a lot more people, because this is
Yeah,
pretty
but I think,
small.
yeah, but I think, just to like, you just hit the nail on the head for me. Like, you were people, especially when you do a Kickstarter campaign, right? People take away the story, like, a few big key ideas. They're not like getting the full picture necessarily. So, you were like, we're open sourcing this thing. You told a really compelling story about information that's locked down. And you presented a really just a snapshot of you and what you did. You didn't go into the whole in-depth story. So I think like that's an important lesson for anyone thinking about a Kickstarter project is finding those sort of key ideas that people can take and run with, even if it's not the whole you.
Yeah.
It's like the you that they'll get to know through the project, and they'll get to know you more later on.
Yeah, I mean, in the Kickstarter, it's been really good for our public profile too. I think people view our company as not a business, and
Yeah.
they see us, and it changed the perspective of how we're viewed in the food community. And I've built a lot of relationships with organizations that I have a ton of respect for because we did this, and I don't think I would have had access to those organizations if we were just producing food.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't get is the sort of like storytelling opportunity, but also the relationship building that you're raising money, but it's a lot of the other stuff that comes out of the campaign that really it helps you as a small business owner and as a sort of a presence in your community.
I agree. I think the other aspects of it have been much more important than any
Yeah.
financial model, that financial side that we gained.
Yeah, I know, and that sort of that sense that you could have raised money elsewhere. You could have gone to investors. You could have found other ways. I think this is the reason why, right?
I
So
had
Kate,
I had investors who did not like this idea.
probably. So Kate is asking a really good follow-on question. Before I do it, I want to say to the viewers watching, if you have questions, please submit them either here through Google Hangouts, we're happy to take them, or via @Kickstarter Tips, which is where we're tweeting. So Kate's follow-on is, how do you maintain those relationships after the campaign ends? So if the big opportunity is relationship building, how do you make sure that you take advantage of that?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't done a ton with our Kickstarter following or backers. We shared information around the project to where we were. Every time we update our plan, we share it, but we haven't used it a lot there. But more than anything, making relationships in the media, making relationship in food organizations, that's just a networking part of the job, and continuing. I mean, I think one of the things I do most is networking and trying to connect with other people, making relationships, continuing. I want to say you talked about the story a lot, and one of the things that we have an advantage. So if we live in Madison, Wisconsin, and you have an incredible amount of talent here because you have a university that is pumping out really talented people. And so we were able to really utilize that for our benefit. And so I think one thing that was good about our project was the video that we made.
Really good video. Your whole campaign is excellent. For anyone watching this, like go look at the campaign page.
But yeah, so Emily Julka, who's like the creative director for our company, she really was thoughtful in that, and I think more than anything, she picked up like how to tell a story about this that was pretty great. And then I mean, one thing that's great about starting a business in Madison is just like your access to labor is really you get like overeducated people who just don't want to move because it's a pretty pleasant place to live.
Yeah, I've noticed that about a few university towns.
Yeah.
But it means there's usually interesting stuff going on, right?
Yeah, it makes, for the size of the city, Madison has a lot going on.
Yeah. So we have a question from the crowd, but before I do, I have a quick question for you, just because I want to point this out. So you told a wonderful story. You had made a beautiful video. You brought a lot of great people, not just local Madison people who knew you, but lots of people to your page. I think one reason you were so successful is because you had such incredible project rewards. Um, can you tell us a little bit about how you conceived of those? I noticed, like the pricing seemed pretty specific, so both the idea and also how you price those out.
Yeah, I think this is maybe where a lot of people who do Kickstarters now are running into a lot of issues because the rewards are a lot of times to fund a project, and we knew we could deliver our rewards very quickly. So, and we knew the cost of our rewards that we were producing, and so we had those things lined up really tight, and so I knew on the side where I was like, okay, if we fail at getting a really good HACCP plan, and we were able to put out one that was good and useful, and we have subsequently kept on improving that, and we're about to drop a new one that's going to be huge for businesses, but our supporters won't care because they're not using the plan.
Yeah.
um,
That's so smart. I mean, you made a call to action that was, I mean, and Kate just made this point over text, like that was universally appealing, but yet not, I mean, I was excited by it, but it's
Yeah.
not directly impacting me.
But then you got some salami or bacon or fermented vegetables. I had a vegetarian who was ethically vegetarian donate $500 to our project because she so believed in the concept, and she was like, I don't eat meat for ethical reasons, but what you're doing is so much better for our food system than my choice on this issue. So she supported us in that. And so then also one thing, we played to our strengths, and I think if you follow Underground at all, we always play to our strengths. And if you're doing a Kickstarter, I think that's a really good advice. We were able to give people opportunities to come work with us too, and so we had some high dollar Kickstarter backers that took that on, and I think that was been really useful for them and for us because they came, they worked in our plant for a couple days, we built relationships with them, they're starting their own businesses around the country now. They continue to feed us information, we feed them information.
I love that.
And I think Underground in general is very much about sharing information, so we would have done that for free. So if someone was like, can I come work with you for a week?
You're like,
we're
totally.
Like, sure. But if you want to give us $2,000, that's great too.
Yeah, so it's like your philosophy as a company of just being so open, which was part of who your DNA as a company. It wasn't just artificial that you were doing this Kickstarter project. We have two questions from Joe Fassler. His first question was, how will the rollout of the Food Safety Modernization Act affect Underground Meats? Do you think it makes open source resources even more important?
That's a great question. So FSMA is going to affect smaller businesses that are not in meat production a lot more than it affects us. So we already currently operate under the regulatory environment that FSMA will be kind of utilizing or doing, but small plants who have to operate under FSMA now, open source could be massive for them because this information isn't hard, and I know people get really worked up about FSMA and they view it as like government overstep, and I understand that it's there to kind of keep people out of the system, but if you spent just a little bit of time, you can figure out how to comply with the rules, and hopefully, I don't know how other small business owners utilize the internet for information, but for me, I'm constantly looking for a model to view and see how it can run, and there's not a lot of good models out there on food safety. I think they're terrible. It's like all business extension stuff, or not business, university extension stuff that's just not communicated very clearly. So by having an open source platform, you get to bring in people who are good at communicating, and you can build a plan, put it up there, and then someone else who is like visualizing it and putting it in a format and doing, Google webinars or things like this on food safety. I know we're planning to do a bunch of HACCP implementation webinars and such with this launch, and so that will give a lot of small business owners new tools to comply with FSMA. I know people hate FSMA, but it's really not the worst thing if you
Worst things have happened.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So we're actually out of time, but I do want to honor Joe ask another great question. So let's make it the last one, and I think it's really relevant to me and what Kate's interested in as well. So his question is just, certifications like HACCP don't necessarily excite customers, even though they enjoy the results. Do your customers care about open source, and should they? So I just want to add one little bit here. I mean, this is related to sort of, you took this big bet on Kickstarter that people would be excited about this democratization of information. You've identified to us that it seems to be core to your value as a company. So do you think that your customers actually literally care about open source?
I think people. Okay, so the question kind of is a little confusing because is it about open source or is it about HACCP? Because people should care about food safety.
Well, yeah, I think it's the idea. I think they care about food safety. It's just the legalities of like what you need to do to be certified as safe, right?
Yeah, I think in people care about open source. I think the internet has made a lot of open source tools effective for people, and if they view that in food that it is a really important thing for them, I think it's a small segment of our customer base. I think more than anything, people care about entrepreneurs and artisan food producers, and so when they view us as an ally for them, then they view us well. Whether or not that's increasing our customer base, I wouldn't think it really is that much.
Yeah, that's really cool. That's great. So thank you, Jonny. Thank you for everyone watching with the great questions. Thank you, Kate, for texting me all your wonderful questions.
People should feel free to contact us.
Cool.
We'd be more than happy, even if you were just like, I want to know more about writing a Kickstarter, or I'm doing it on creating a product, I can give you the tips we have. Or if you guys are involved in food processing at all and are just like, I don't even know where to start, I can generally give some pretty quick tips on that stuff.
Yeah, geek out. So related, go to, it's undergroundmeats.com, right?
Undergroundfoodcollective.org is probably the best place.
Foodcollective.org. Okay, so for Jonny, go to foodcollective.org. For Kate and all the wonderful writing that her team does, go to newfoodacademy.com. And then for my team here at Kickstarter, or the community education team, visit us on Twitter at Kickstarter Tips, or on Medium at Kickstarter Tips. Those are our best homes. Lots of information on running a solid campaign there.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, thank you. So good to connect.
Bye, Kate.